Well, we have other round from foreign correspondents, but just a short observation. بكرر تاني المواد اللي تم توزيعها موجود مواد إضافية، السي دي بتاع المواد الفيلمية والصور اللي بتوضح أعمال القتل والترويع، وأيضا نقاط عن ما حدث وقائمة بالكنائس التي تم إحراقها. Abigail from Washington Post.
Thank you, Your Excellency and Ambassador Abdulati. Can you give us some clarity on what happened to the people who were removed from Al-Fatah Mosque yesterday? Where are they now? What is their status? And is it correct, as per some media outlets, that all 250 of them are being charged with attacking the Azbakiya police station? Second question, sorry, I have three, bear with me. My second question, can you tell us more about the government efforts to dissolve the Brotherhood and what the reasoning would be for that? Third, Ambassador Abdulati has said that some 24 churches nationwide have been attacked. You showed us footage of one church in your video montage. I think this whole room would benefit from seeing footage of more churches. And I'm wondering if you could show us that now. If you don't have that footage available, does that reflect an unwillingness by the state to investigate those attacks? Thank you.
NPR, Fadil? Yes, ma'am.
I was hoping you could talk a little bit about European and American officials who were involved in mediation efforts prior to the decision to disperse the sit-ins, say that there was an unwillingness on the part of the government to take a deal that the Brotherhood was going to agree to thin out those protests and move forward politically. Can you respond to that or talk about that? Also, can you talk to me more about the reconciliation efforts with much of the Brotherhood leadership in jail? Who would you be reconciling with? And thirdly, on Thursday we saw weapons among some of those protesters, but we also saw other civilians with weapons and civilians shooting each other. At what point do the security forces get involved? And some accuse the government of actually encouraging sort of chaos on the streets. If you could also respond to that.
Sure. One last set of questions and I'll answer all of them, sure.
Akiyama-san from Mainichi Shimbun.
How many Japanese do we have here?
Yes. We have some of them, yeah.
Thank you, Excellency. My question is about what happened on 14th of August. Thanks to you, we could see a lot of things what the Brotherhood did, but we couldn't see what the army or the security forces was doing there. So it seems that the government or the army or the security forces has video footage or the photos a lot. So do you have any plan to show us, these evidence?
Thank you. Let me address those questions again in inverse order. The last one and the one about the churches, I think, are basically the same theme. When is the information available? My first point is, I just mentioned to you all that we are going to establish a Blue Ribbon Commission to verify exactly what happened with all of the events post the June 30th. So I've openly told you that we are going to look into all of these things. That's is our own historical reasons, and in order to learn from the lessons and to be able to move forward. It will be done in a credible fashion. Who and what the details, we haven't finished discussing that. What the different foreign ministry's focus essentially is on relations with abroad. So while we try to show you what's available to us in terms of where we felt there was not enough exposure in following, frankly, foreign media abroad, we saw that you covered quite extensively what the army, or excuse me, what the police did. So what we were trying to do was to show you what you seem to not have seen. You seem to have the footage of what the police did. That's why we didn't focus on that. Otherwise, this would be a briefing that more is Interior Ministry or the الاعلاميه. So we were just trying to fill in the gap. The same kind of question came from the back there. Well, two issues. I don't know, something about civilians. Sorry? Yes.
You mentioned a lot of stuff about Thursday and many of the protesters being armed, but we also saw civilians armed on the other side.
That's an excellent point. That's really an excellent point. And that's one of our concerns. I don't, as an Egyptian, want to see Egyptians shooting each other, irrespective of what they believe in. I can't accept that whether it is an Islamist or a secularist, that the answer is you have weapons and you shoot. That's why we're trying to achieve a sense of security and stability. Anybody shooting is doing an illegal act. Now, regrettably, given what's happened over the last 2.5 years, including what's happened in neighboring states, the flow of weapons across our borders has been quite free, and the number of weapons available in civilian hands, unauthorized weapons, is quite extensive. Whatever your political leanings, weapons are there. So having this sense of insecurity ends up to what you said, and which I complain about, that Egyptians are shooting each other. Both of that will be investigated. So, and in many cases, the police intervention, in many cases, not in all cases because we couldn't do it in all cases, but in many cases, the intervention was meant to keep the civilians apart from each other. Even if you look at the particular situation of the mosque in the Ramses area, I personally heard on television repeatedly the police asking civilians to move away from the mosque, not to engage the entrance of the mosque, to allow them to engage those who are inside. In terms of the question, let me first address the question also about those in the mosque. I honestly don't know where those who were there are now. I don't know what procedures were taken as a result of that. As I said, as a foreign minister, we don't deal with that in that kind of detail. We may have it in a day or two, but if you want to know the exact answer, you need to ask the Minister of Interior or the Minister of Justice. They would have it on a more real-time basis. The question about the what's in the media, the Western media, and frankly, even in the Egyptian media, in Al-Shuruk has the same story, about a deal being on the table that was not accepted. Before leaving the Foreign Service 5 years ago, and now coming back, most of my career was in one form or the other in negotiations. And sometimes deals work, sometimes deals don't work. What's required is to find the right timing and the right substance to bring all the sides together. I'm not sure. Let me first confirm. There were a lot of proposals. That's obvious. So were there proposals? Yes, there were proposals. Were there proposals that people felt each side was going to commit to sincerely? That was a different question. Were there proposals that were agreeable to both sides? Obviously no. Part of having a rational, serious, long negotiation is to defuse the situation and sit down and talk rationally. That's again why I'm emphasizing on the issue of preserving security and stability, and then getting into what can be done and what cannot be done. On the issue of those arrested and how can we achieve reconciliation with that, well, obviously we're between a rock and a hard place. Anybody who has committed a crime or is accused of having committed a crime has to be investigated. You cannot allow people simply to commit crimes and just because of the sake that they are leaders, then they become immune to prosecution. But after the investigation, if there is no evidence, then those accused have to be released. If there is evidence, then the process moves to a second level, and then the court decides whether the person involved is guilty or not. This is going to be a phased process. We've had violence, we've had friction, so therefore, obviously, there are some people arrested and there are some people dead. It's not going to be, we can't negotiate until everybody is free. It's never going to be that everybody's free if people have been killed. So I don't see a distinction between applying the law and negotiations. But I grant your point. It's complicated and we need to find a way to do this. And that's why, frankly, and it comes to both of your questions, that's why, frankly, at one point we agreed to have good offices of foreign friends, because we couldn't find a solution of how to do this directly. And it's also a response to your question, it's why, frankly, the first set of offers failed, because you couldn't square the circle on who has the authority to take a deal and who does not. So this process will continue. On the issue of dissolving the MB, what was announced yesterday, my understanding is this is being studied. My understanding is it's being studied. Now, the status of the MB, in other words, no decision has been taken yet. The status of the MB, even before the revolution on June 30th, and after that as well, was subject to question because originally their status was unknown, then it became codified very quickly under, in rather strange circumstances. There's no transparency in terms of their operations, financially or otherwise. And frankly, what status should they have, given that they have a party? I mean, you have to take into account here that the discussion, even the study, has not been about revoking the Freedom and Justice Party. It's been about what is the status of the MB. But even that, it's still under discussion and no decision has been taken. On the issue of churches, I don't know what Bedra showed you or did not, but he keeps showing me a list of a couple of dozen churches that he can give you that if it's not available. I'm sorry.
We show the footage here. Some of them. Sure. Yes.
Well, he can show you this. I'm happy to allow you to sit here later and go through all the footage. It's quite extensive. I don't have the time to sit through that, however. Let's take one last set of questions. Yep.